So hello everyone, this is the Promotory channel. Today we're going to take apart this engine. This is a Mercedes-Benz M442. So what kind of engine is this? One of my subscribers from Murmansk wrote to me that he bought an engine from a bus. We can see that this engine is in a bus configuration and he wants to install it on a boat. This is the boat. This is what it looks like. So, at first, this boat had a VECA engine installed. So, a VECA engine was installed, but the customer decided to remove it and put in this kind of engine instead. That means this is a very simple engine with no electronics, no turbo. So, if something happens on the water, you can do some repairs. So, the customer sent me the engine through a transport company. I've already unpacked it, put it on the table, and now we're going to take it apart. So I don't know where this engine was purchased, but we can see that all the bolts are marked with paint like this. You could say they're sealed. That is, we see the seal in the heads, valve covers, injectors, and for example the pump. Basically every single bolt, absolutely all of them, are marked with this kind of paint. Here's what I found and noticed while unpacking and inspecting it. So there's a hole right here on the housing. This is the compressor cavity where the oil drains, and it turns out if we have a hole like this, then the oil will go straight through here. That's the first thing. And second, the transmission mounting bolt. You can see there's a crack on this side that goes into the starter cavity. Here it goes. So the housing will have to be replaced in any case. Also, I noticed the flywheel. It's kind of a standard flywheel, but there's also this insert here. I don't know if it's homemade, maybe it was already fitted for a boat. The drive will be here. Well, in general, I don't know, I'll check with the customer to find out what this spacer is. Alright, so my task is to disassemble and check the condition of this engine. Figure out what machining work needs to be done and determine which spare parts we need to buy. So, basically I need to determine the scope of work. Then, we can assemble it, paint it, and start it up on the bench to see how it runs after the repair. Alright, so that's the amount of work we have. Let's get started. So I removed the valve covers from the first to the fourth cylinder. Under the covers themselves there's an emulsion. There's emulsion and rust on the rocker arms, and we can also see the push rods are covered in rust and emulsion. Apparently we have antifreeze coolant getting into the oil. Most likely it's the seals under the liners, possibly the seating area for the liner itself where the seals are installed, or maybe even the liners themselves. We won't guess yet. Let's take it apart and find out what's happening. So I've removed the fuel lines. We can see they're already crushed. There's a sharp ridge here. So we'll need to replace the lines. So I've removed the heads, and what do we see? So first of all, the engine is naturally aspirated. I had my doubts because there's a cover with a drain from the turbos, an oil drain from the turbos. So I was wondering if maybe everything was put together here, like maybe there were turbines before, and then it was converted. We have a naturally aspirated engine as shown by the piston shape. And third, there's a lot of wear, so I don't know, the liners definitely need to be replaced. We'll check the pistons if they're in good condition. Maybe we'll keep the old ones. And we can also see there's rust, which means the engine has been sitting for some time. But overall, in general, everything is pretty good. So we can see the bolts weren't tightened, and we can see that this spacer here was probably installed by the customer himself. For the drive on the boat, you can see it was made to the right dimensions, so it goes in there, but the length of the bolts doesn't fit. So here it's literally 5 or 6 millimeters just about 4 threads the bolt goes into the crankshaft. That's why I'm going to replace these bolts. I have some longer bolts, about a centimeter longer, which come with the automatic transmission. There's also a similar intermediate washer for the damper plate there, which holds it in place. So I removed the oil pan, and we can see that inside the entire crankshaft is rusty. The block is rusty. The crankshaft, the connecting rods, I don't know. Apparently this engine sat unused for some time. So what else did I notice? The relief valve got stuck. So we can see there's a gap in the hole here, and we can see that the spring is compressed and it stayed in the open position. So the relief valve definitely needs to be replaced 100%. Well, most likely the pump will also need to be replaced. And what else can we talk about? If this happened while the engine was running and the relief valve got stuck like this, then we should have problems with the bearings because we already had no oil pressure. Alright, let's take a look now. So I'm removing the heat exchanger, taking off the cover, removing the pulley, the front cover and the oil pump. Next we'll remove the pistons and connecting rods. So I've taken off the cover and I want to show you something interesting. Here we can see the washer, the thrust washer that the camshaft bears against. Apparently it's burned like this, basically welded on. I always say that you need to measure the camshaft end play so that we have a gap here. It doesn't matter if the gap is 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter, but there must be a gap. The washer shouldn't sit tight against it. In this case, apparently the camshaft was pressed tightly, and because of the friction this kind of wear happened. Basically it burned everything out. Well, we're going to replace this washer. Actually not even the washer, we'll use a different cover. And as for the camshaft, we'll check if the gear itself is damaged or not. Alright, so next I'll be removing the counterweights. They have to be removed anyway, either to polish the shaft or maybe to grind it. Well, in any case they need to be removed. Now I'll number them: 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. I'll also number the connecting rods and then unbolt the counterweights and the connecting rods. I'm removing the piston and the rings are clearly worn. You can immediately see from the rings that they're worn out. Well, the piston still seems to be in more or less satisfactory condition. Of course, we'll clean all this up and take a closer look. I can see some small scuffs and scratches here. So this is probably our worst piston. This is the fourth cylinder. Here we can see the skirt is all worn down. There are also scuffs in this area. On the opposite side, we have really deep scratches here. So this piston definitely needs to be replaced. We can also see the condition of the bearings. Deep scratches. So the main bearings are also standard. I can't figure out the year of manufacture, I can't find it. They might still be the factory originals. Here on the crankshaft we have the year 1991 marked as the year of manufacture for this crankshaft. That means the connecting rod bearings are a bit better. The main bearings are really bad. We can see the scoring and wear there. So I take out the camshaft and right away you can see there are problems with it. For example, you can clearly see that this lobe is worn down. I think it's even worn at an angle. There are more cam lobes ahead that are chipped. Well, I'll take it out now, of course. Here, for example, you can see the lobe is crumbling. Here too, you can see the lobe is crumbling. Well, I'll take it out now, wipe it off and take some measurements. But most likely, we'll need to replace the camshaft. So, I also looked at the gear, and now we definitely need to replace the camshaft. No doubt about it. You can see here, one tooth is broken and two teeth are chipped. Here, two teeth are chipped. Here the tooth is broken. So replacing the gear is problematic. Thought, well, okay, if we had a camshaft in perfect condition, then we could press the gear off and replace it. We could do all that. But since the gear is already questionable and the camshaft itself is in bad condition, I think we'll have a new camshaft. Well, I mean a different one. They used one in good condition, maybe a new one. So, here is the chipped cam lobe, which is also worn out. The top of the cam lobe is chipped. Further along the cam lobe itself, there are these kinds of pits. camshaft absolutely needs replacement. Alright, let's check the lifters. The lifters here aren't in very good condition either. Right. So there's wear and there are pits. We can also see there are pits. This one's better, but there are still pits. So that means the lifters will also need to be replaced. The camshaft bushings obviously need to be replaced. The lifters need to be replaced. The camshaft needs to be replaced. And at the very least, the sleeves. So the engine is disassembled. Let's sum up first about the block. I cleaned it here and tried to find where the coolant is getting into the oil. There seems to be a seat for the rubber seals there. Well, it's not in perfect condition, but it seems to be in pretty good shape. I cleaned everything on top and also checked the surface. Questions have arisen about the cylinder head seating area. As you can see, there's some wear. Well, in general it's clear. The engine is from 1991. The crankshaft has 1991 on it. It can't be in perfect condition. It's clear that there will be some defects on it anyway. And obviously you have to make some compromises. So, for now, there's no decision about the block, what kind of machining work will be done, and so on. So, we'll still be working on the block. As for the rest, like I said before, the camshaft will be replaced. That's 100%. Next. Well, obviously the camshaft bushings and lifters will also be new. Next. The crankshaft. It seems to be in good condition so far. You could even say it's in perfect condition. Well, obviously I'll wash it, wipe it down, polish it, and take measurements. I don't think there will be any problems with the crankshaft. Now, about the pistons. As I showed, there are scoring. These are the two worst pistons in the worst condition. Here we can see embedded metal shavings, scoring, and so on. Well, most likely the piston assembly will be new. If it's really an extreme case, you can use the old pistons. But that's really a last resort, let's put it that way. Of course, it's preferable for us to have a new piston assembly. Well, the bearings, main and connecting rod bearings, that's a given. The seals under the cylinder liners, adjustment rings, all of that should also be new. The connecting rod bushings will need to be replaced. As you can see, the connecting rods are rusty like this. So all of that will need to be cleaned. We'll also be disassembling the cylinder heads to take a look. Well, I think it's a standard scope of work. That's resurfacing the mating surfaces. Also replacing the bushings, possibly replacing the valves and replacing the valve stem seals. We'll have new fuel lines. The starter, I don't know if I showed it or not, but this is what it looks like. So it's either repaired or refurbished. We can see there are some markings here. We'll paint it. Well, I guess we'll leave the starter as it is. Next, we'll take apart the heat exchanger and check out this core. Maybe we'll replace the core. Maybe we'll do a fuel flush. The fuel injection equipment will go for inspection first, but later there might be some repairs. Well, and here, as I already showed, the cylinder liners are scrapped. As for the cylinder head, I already said what we're doing. The pump is going in for repairs. We're getting rid of the compressor. We don't need it. Well, I'll explain and show everything else later. So that's the amount of work we have ahead of us with this engine. Next will be assembly, then painting, and then a test run on the bench. And then packing and shipping to the customer. Maybe at the end of the video there will also be some footage from the customer showing how the engine was installed on the boat. Maybe after some time I'll publish a short video report about this engine, how it was installed on the boat, how it works, and so on. But that's all far in the future, because I took this engine with the understanding that it doesn't need to be done urgently. By agreement with the customer, I have, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months to repair this engine. Well, because it's basically outside my normal queue. And since the deadlines are so extended, I agreed and told the customer to send it. I'll work on it and I can. Right now, I've taken it apart to start the process, to figure out what machining work is needed, to understand what parts are needed, and to order the parts. Right now, as you know, the situation with spare parts isn't great. Some parts take weeks, maybe even months to arrive. So I took it apart to get the process started, so to speak. So right now it's April. I don't know the exact date, the 3rd, 4th, maybe the 5th or 6th. We can see there's still snow on the ground. Well, I think I'll put this engine back together no earlier than July or August, maybe even in September. So it's been about 2 months since I took it apart. Well, that was the agreement, to work on the engine whenever I have the chance. I kind of had a line of several engines to work on. Right now I have this engine left to repair and also a Volvo engine. I'm still waiting on parts and some machining is being done. I decided to work on this engine. Basically, I already have everything for it. Everything's bought and prepared. And in theory, it should take me about 4, 5, maybe 6 days to assemble it. If I work actively and put in the effort, I think I can manage it in that time. So what has already been done? I've already prepared the block, meaning I've completely washed it, cleaned it, blew out all the channels, I removed the oil gallery plugs, and also removed the oil nozzles. Well, in general, everything is already fully prepared on my end. Now I'm going to install the plugs back in place, install the oil nozzles, install the camshaft bushings, and then we'll start assembling. So here on my table I have the plugs, and here I have the oil nozzles. I've also already prepared the crankshaft. It's polished, and I've already replaced the running ring. I've installed a new oil seal, blown out the oil channels, and cleaned the threads for the counterweight mounts. So overall the crankshaft is ready. The crankshaft is in perfect shape with less than 2/100ths of wear, I checked. The camshaft is also ready, it's on that table. I've got the cylinder heads, oil pan and the fuel pump, which just came back from repair on the shelf over there. There's still something on the top shelf that hasn't been cleaned yet. For example, we can see the compressor and water pump. The pump still needs repair. There's still work to do. Some things are done, others remain. The cylinder heads have been surface ground. Here's how they look now. My task is to replace the guide, I think only on the exhaust valve, and to replace the valves. We'll handle the cylinder heads later. That's our scope of work. Let's begin. So as you can see, I'm weighing the pistons and the weight distribution is just perfect. 7 pistons, well actually 6 pistons weigh 383, I mean gram for gram. It turns out one piston is 3 grams lighter. I think it's this one. Well anyway, it doesn't matter, one of the pistons is 3 grams lighter and I think this one is the lightest piston. No. So, the third one. 380. Well, basically, relatively speaking, the difference is that 2 pistons are 3 grams lighter. So, as far as I remember, this is actually the best weight distribution I've ever seen in all my years doing this. It turns out that 6 pistons are 383 grams and 2 pistons are 379. So, the maximum difference in piston weight we got is 4 grams. I mean, I remember if I've had this happen before or not. I think this is the first time. I installed the crankshaft, tightened it first with a gun, then with 30 Newton meters, and then turned it another notch. So I tightened them up. To be continued. So I installed the crankshaft, tightened it first with a gun, and then with a torque range to 330 Newton meters, and then turned it another 90 degrees. So I tightened the main bolts, installed the side tie bolts, and tightened them as well. That's it, the crankshaft is fully tightened. This is how it turns now. I've already installed the front cover with a new seal and put on the pulley. Now I'm going to install the rear cover, the flywheel housing. It's late. The rear housing works for us. I'm inspecting the compressor. I took it apart and I'm checking the crankshaft, which we can keep. We have the old bearing, the old one. I replaced the piston, new rings, and that's it. We also have a repair kit installed on the head with new valves and new gaskets. So now I'm assembling the compressor. Then I'll install the timing gear. I haven't installed it yet. I'll align the camshaft by the marks, and then I'll close up the cover. I'll close up the cover, and then I'll install the flywheel and close it up. So next I'm working on repairing the cylinder heads. As for the heads, what I've done so far is I washed them, sent them to the surface grinder. They came back from the machine and I cleaned them again. Well, briefly I cleaned the seats with a wire brush, cleaned under the injectors, took out some washers. There were a few washers pressed together with dirt, as usual. Next, I replaced the guide bushing on the exhaust valve. So all the intake ones remain old, 8 pieces, and all the exhaust ones are new, all 8 pieces. So I replaced it. Now I'm going to cut the seats. I'll just make them narrower. I won't touch the working surface. New. For the exhaust, I'll first go over the working surface new, and then adjust the width. So about the valves, the exhaust valves are also new. All 8 of them, and the intake valves are all old. Also all 8 of them. So I wanted to lap them in place without touching either the seat or the valve itself. But after I cleaned the valves, I saw that the valve itself, the seating surface on the valve, still has some defects. So I had to machine them like this on the lathe. Let me remind you, here we have a 30-degree angle, the exhaust has a 45-degree angle, the intake valve has a 30-degree angle. So I machined all 8 valves on the lathe. And now we'll lap them one cylinder head at a time. So what else do I want to do? We can see, for example, on the 3rd cylinder head, well, I don't know how well you can see it on camera, but right here there are these small pits. And inside, in the exhaust port, there are also these small pits. It's like corrosion. So I want to check the cylinder heads. Well, basically I want to do a pressure test. This is our 3rd cylinder head, and I think I saw it somewhere else too. Well, for example, on the 7th one, also on the 6th, we can see these pits right on the intake seat itself. I'll still be pressure testing the cylinder heads, but I'm not sure what will be on camera. So in a nutshell, I'll tell you how things are going and what the plans are for these cylinder heads. Alright, so now I'm starting with the 1st cylinder head, gluing on the pads right away. Probably for 3 or 4 heads, however many pads I have, gluing the pads, which are wider than the seats, and then we start lapping. Alright, so that's the scope of work we have. Let's get started. Alright, so the cylinder head is ready. I've lapped all the valves, and you can see that there's a track like this on each valve. So, from the 1st cylinder head to the 4th, if you look closely, there's a copper color on the seat. You can see that from the 5th to the 8th. there isn't, but from the first to the fourth there is. And also on the valves you can see the track itself has this copper shine. What does that mean? I tried a new lapping paste. I also did a pressure test on several cylinder heads, the most problematic ones I mentioned. Here you can see where there are pits, but the pressure test showed that everything is fine. The head is sealed. So I prepared the valve stem seals, springs, keepers, washers and retainers. We can see there's a bit of rust here, but I'll wipe it off now. It's just surface rust. I've prepared the tools, so I'm assembling the cylinder heads. Then I'll install the pistons and close up the oil pan. In general, in about 3 or 4 days, the engine should be ready. Alright, the cylinder heads are ready. While I was working on the heads, the connecting rods came back from the machine shop. As usual, the piston pin bushings were replaced and machined, and the seats for the rod bearings were restored. So the connecting rods are back from repair. Now I'm unscrewing these bolts. They've been tightened to torque spec. I'm removing the bolts, installing the pistons onto the connecting rods, and then we'll start installing the pistons into the block. To be continued. So I've installed the pistons, and the bolts were tightened to 120 Newton meters. Then we turned them 90 degrees, marking across, and after another 90 degrees, the marks are along the length. So I've tightened the connecting rod bolts, installed the counterweights, and tightened the counterweight mounting bolts. So I've already checked that all my numbers match the caps, the connecting rod, and I've checked that all the caps are in order. I checked how the oil jet lines up with the piston at top dead center. Well, in general I've double checked everything again, and now I'm going to put the oil pan on. The oil pan is already prepared, washed and cleaned. A new oil pump will be installed as usual. A 4043 brand and a new pressure relief valve will be installed. I've also prepared the oil pickup, the gasket for the pickup, the bolts and the oil pan bolts. Here is the old pressure relief valve. The oil pan gasket will have a new one. And these are the bolts for mounting the pump. So I've installed the oil pan, tightened it, installed a new drain plug and a new washer. So now I'm going to turn the engine over. But before I do that, I need to install the heat exchanger. As for the heat exchanger, I took it apart, unscrewed this bypass valve and checked it. Well, the spring, the condition of the valve itself, the valve seat and so on. I washed everything as usual, blew it out, removed the old gaskets and degreased it. I also washed the radiator itself several times, first with diesel fuel, then with special chemicals, and then blew it out with compressed air. Now I'm assembling the heat exchanger. The gasket is new as usual. I also prepared the gaskets for the radiator itself, the radiator mounting bolts and the heat exchanger mounting bolts. Everything's ready. I'm assembling and installing the heat exchanger, and then I'll start installing the cylinder heads. The heads have been lapped as I showed earlier. All the bolts are ready. We're using the old bolts. I cleaned them in the sandblasting chamber and I measured them to make sure they're all the right size. I've already lubricated each bolt. A little grease on the bearing surface on the washer and also a little grease on the threads themselves. So all the cylinder heads are ready and all the bolts are ready too. The head gaskets, as usual, are from the Erling company. I haven't used any others. So I worked off camera for a while. What was done? The last footage was when I installed the cylinder heads. I installed the cylinder heads and tightened them. We torqued them to 190 Newton meters and then turned them another 90 degrees. I tightened the bolts, then installed the push rods, installed the rocker arms, sat down and adjusted the valves. I explained valve adjustments in every video, but I'll quickly repeat it. We turn the engine clockwise until the rocker arm on the first cylinder moves. As soon as it moves, the intake valve has moved. After that, we find the top dead center on the first cylinder and then we adjust the valves according to this scheme. So we set the intake valves to 0.4 millimeters and the exhaust valves to 0.6 millimeters. I've already installed the injectors. The injectors were serviced. Next, I installed the injection pump. The pump was tested, but I had to clean it in this area. Notice there's one bolt here. Honestly, the inspection and preparation weren't that great. So I installed the pump 15 degrees before top dead center. This is 0 top dead center. And this is 15 degrees before top dead center. Well, here the main big rubber seal is new. The oil channel has a new rubber seal and the mounting bolts. And that's basically it. Like that. So now I'm installing the cover, installing the valve covers, and here the intake manifold. Somewhere around here. I also need to install the coolant hose to the compressor and so on. Oh, and I also installed the head on the compressor. I think last time I showed it, it didn't have the head yet. I installed it into this cover and put the head on. Basically, that's it. We don't have much work left. And soon we'll be painting the engine and starting it up right here on the table. I was working without the camera again and can't remember what I did or didn't say on camera. So I installed the air intake manifold, put on the bracket, the pump, installed the ring and the repair kit, put the pump in place and the filler neck. Basically that's it. I think I already showed and talked about everything else. So what's next? I need to install the high pressure fuel lines. I'll install the lines and then I'll start preparing the engine for painting. As usual, I'll cover up certain areas, open up the grooves, and so on. I'll paint it. I don't know yet. I'll see how quickly the paint dries. If it dries fast, maybe I'll try to start it today. If it takes a long time to dry, then I'll just start it up later. It'll be tomorrow, and the packing will also be tomorrow, because the day after tomorrow, in the morning, it already has to go to the customer. Alright, so that's our scope of work. Let's continue. let's continue. Alright, so my engine is running. Everything works perfectly, smoothly, quietly. There's almost no smoke. Well, of course, some assembly lubricant is burning off, which is normal, and besides it's still cold. So, the pressure is good. It's at 6 atmospheres, which is the maximum before the relief valve kicks in. Basically, everything is great. Everything is working well. Alright, next I'll be packing up the engine. Now I'm draining the diesel fuel, taking off the starter, and so on. I'm placing it on the pallet, packing it up, and wrapping it in film to prepare for shipping. Tomorrow it will be sent to the customer. Alright, so I'll be ending this video here. Thank you all for watching. Good luck to everyone and goodbye.